Donald Trump has just taken office, and he has already signed a slew of executive orders that target democracy and the rule of law. I'm joined today by a guest who knows all about it and what's being done to fight against it in court. Skye Perryman joins me on this edition of Defending Democracy. Welcome, Skye Perryman, to Defending Democracy.
Thanks for having me. What a week. And we're
Skye,
only on...
I am so excited you're here because you are truly the woman, the person of the moment. As we have seen the terribleness of Donald Trump unfold, you and Democracy Forward, the organization that you had, an organization that I helped found, and I'm on its board. But you are the person who runs it and the person who is driving all of this. You are leading what I call the opposition. Not the resistance, the opposition.
I agree with that. I wish you could tell your media colleagues, they always label us as resistance. I'm with you. It's an opposition, a full-on.
All right. So tell us what is going on. What did Donald Trump do? And what are you and Democracy Forward doing to push back?
Well, Donald Trump did what, of course, he said he was going to do and what we know he does. He did a big show and signed, hundreds of executive orders. Many of them are performative. Many of them are not, and they could cause real harm to real people. And, he wanted to call it shock and awe. He's been very clear about this. At Democracy Forward, we believe a lot of the actions that he's already taken and that he no doubt will take in the days ahead and that his administration will take are unlawful, they're harmful, and they ignore the law. And so we are marshaling our resources and working with so many organizations and alongside so many organizations that you do work with and support, Mark, to make sure that people are on the courthouse steps challenging this bad activity. We also think it's important that the American public know what he's doing because it's so extreme. You talk about this a lot, but it's so extreme it's almost unbelievable. And so earlier this week we launched Executive Order Legal Response Center, which people can access at democracy2025.org, where the American public can see for themselves what these executive orders are, how people are responding, and how they will impact their lives.
All right, so Skye, I want to start by talking about some of the lawsuits. I saw that immediately upon Donald Trump being sworn in, like literally seconds later, you and Democracy Forward had already sued over the misnamed Department of Government Efficiency. It is not a department. It's not part of the government. It doesn't necessarily seem to be particularly efficient, but you sued over it. And so tell us why that was the first lawsuit and why it's important for people who care about rule of law and democracy.
Yeah, I mean, this is huge, right? Because you have a bunch of unelected billionaires, Donald Trump just saying that he's appointing people to influence and advise the government, to make sweeping recommendations and even potentially take action. I mean, the reporting has been pretty unbelievable with members of DOGE, so to speak, within the government already. Hiding things, not operating transparently, and seeking to influence the ability of the government to serve people. We have the privilege of representing veterans and teachers and public health, the American Public Health Association, and consumer advocates, all who have a say and want the government to do better. We all want the government to do better. We all want it to be efficient. But this is an operation that's really operating under the shroud of secrecy in order to serve Donald Trump's personal interest and political loyalists and not the American people. And so we have sued. Other groups have sued too. We think that's a good thing because it is so unlawful. We want to make sure that there is a lot of accountability in the courts. And we've sued to bring it in compliance with federal law. The president can talk to whoever he wants to talk to and have advisors if he wants to have them. But there's a process for that in this country that involves sunshine, not secrecy. And it's important that the American people know what's going on with their government.
All right. So you said that, yours was the first lawsuit, which it was, and then others sued as well, which you were very polite and said that that's a great thing. We'll see. I've had experience. Sometimes it's helpful. Sometimes it slows things down. But that's we're gonna go with the positive here, Skye, and I'm gonna believe you.
We love the positive here.
That's a good thing. But I want the audience to understand something. Democracy Forward started after 2016, and you were involved in the organization in its sort of first iteration and its first version. And so you are no stranger to holding accountable Donald Trump and his unlawful actions. You're no stranger to holding government generally accountable for unlawful actions, whether they be state or federal government. So maybe what would be helpful is if you give a little bit of context, like how do you view this moment against the backdrop of the work that you as a lawyer in your career or as an organization have been doing? Because this is not like a new thing for you.
No, it's not a new thing. But we are, and I know people get tired of hearing it, but it is true. We are at sort of the most pivotal and critical moment in our country's modern democracy history. In 2021, as you know, after January 6th, the United States was added to a list of global backsliding democracies. Scholars have now gone back and said it should have been on that list actually throughout the Trump administration because of conduct they were engaged in. And it's remained on that list ever since. And now we have a person in office that has already shown in the first hours of his administration that he is going to target the American people, that he's going to weaponize the government against the American people. And that is really problematic. And we're at a crisis and boiling point. But this country has institutions and has a constitution, and we have rights. And there are things that you can go to Capital One Arena, you can do it on the top of Trump Tower, but you can't with the stroke of a pen. Take away the American people's rights. The courts are going to have something to say about that. Members of Congress should have something to say about that if they would get to work. And so we're really focused on that. So this is not a new thing, but this moment is new because there's there's a strategy, and you've talked about this before. There's a strategy that Trump uses, that these far right Project 2025 groups use. There's a strategy to sort of get people to throw in the towel, to say the courts aren't going to do anything for you anytime. Look at Dobbs, look at all these things that are happening. So don't even try. And by the way, it's cold in Washington this weekend and people have things to do with their families and they're not out in the streets. And so clearly this whole thing is over. The country's over. Let's just pack up and go home. And what we know, and my work has shown this, your work has shown it, our work at Democracy Forward has shown this every day, is that there is a lot of fight left in the American people, and that the American people don't stand for this extremism. And I do think that this is a moment where, it is a moment where it's going to take everyone doing their part. And it's hugely important that the courts be a front line of this fight. And so that's really what we're focused on doing here. And it's consistent with a lot of the work that we've done over the years.
Yeah, and so I want to drill down into this because you're right. It is something that I talk about all the time. The fact is that the cynics want us to give up. Donald Trump benefits if we believe that there is no point in fighting. And that's part of the reason why it is the right wing that is oftentimes saying, oh, the courts, we have the courts, we have the courts. Joe Biden appointed a record number of federal court judges. And sure, the Supreme Court is not the Supreme Court I would choose, but they hear relatively few cases. And, so I'm always making this argument that look at the voting cases that I litigate and look at the record and then tell me that the courts don't matter. But I want to talk about Democracy Forward for a second, because the same is true of your organization. I mean, the fact is, you all have had some enormously consequential victories, even with the courts as they were appointed by Donald Trump, and then through the Biden administration. So tell people about those victories and why that is the reason why we cannot give up on fighting in court.
Yes. I mean, we win a lot more than people think we would win. Against Donald Trump and his administration, we won on things that, by the way, I went through the executive orders. I went to the Resource Center, and again, everybody should go there, democracy2025.org. But I went to the White House thing myself and went through them. You probably did too last night. And look, they're saying that he has better lawyers this time. I saw a bunch of very poorly lawyered executive orders that came out. And so, one, we're already seeing this playbook they had last time, which we will see again this time, which is that they don't operate with any level of, respect for any type of rule of law issue. And that is actually a benefit in the courts, because they will do things just like with this Department of Government Efficiency. They're not complying with a basic law that is ideologically neutral. I mean, the Federal Advisory Committee Act is a law just about transparency in the American people. It was signed during the Watergate era. And we use a lot of those laws that were signed during the Watergate era with Donald Trump. And so we've had a number in the last Trump administration, we shut down a range of corrupt commissions. We restored federal funding that was abruptly cut off, which we already know that he will do again. We were able to successfully challenge a range of really problematic policies, from voting to education to reproductive health care to efforts to sabotage the ACA. But even in this time where after he was able to get some federal judges appointed and shape the courts, we win. We recently blocked a statewide law in Arkansas that would criminalize librarians. And this was the conversation I had hoped we were going to have in 2025, Mark. I hoped we were going to have, a pro-democracy president, but we would still be talking about the urgency of what is happening in the states. And we go to hard places and we win a lot. And so, it's just critical that the American people understand that our courts are there. They're not the silver bullet, but they're the front line. And if you want to win anything in this time, and if you want to ensure that rights are protected, the courts are a huge part of that. And so that's what we're focused on. And again, I think that we will win. We will win a lot. And in the instances where we don't win because of some politicized issue or ideological, bench or something like that, we have the power through the courts to really explain to the American people what's at stake. I mean, the Lilly Ledbetter Act, right? We tell this story about Ruth Bader Ginsburg at the Supreme Court, lost a case, won the war, because Congress had to step in and act. And so we really see this at this time. It's really about collective power building, and the courts are a huge front line there.
Yeah, and I think that, your litigation in the reproductive rights arena illustrates that as well. I mean, you've had both some remarkable successes after Dobbs. Dobbs itself was a catastrophically terrible decision, terrible consequences, poorly reasoned, wrong in every regard. And your litigation response was to both be effective in many instances, but also I think helped partially tell the narrative of what it actually means, right? Because Dobbs is this big case up here, but then the implications of it are all taking place down here.
I think that's right. And we know we'll see that again. By the way, we're going to see that on abortion and medication abortion and all the work that we do, but we're going to see that across the board. Last night, the president signed executive orders that purport to enable him to appoint an unlimited amount of political appointees. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's not making the news this morning. A lot of it's about national emergencies and immigration. You're already seeing litigation on that, and we're glad about that. But there's a whole lot of other things. Do you want someone that is not experienced at understanding the safety of your medication, determining whether it gets approval? I don't. And I don't think that people that I grew up with, many of whom are conservative, I grew up in Texas, want that either, right? And I think that a lot of our litigation will have the ability. A lot of people voted, it seems like what we're hearing, some people voted with Donald Trump because they don't have a trust in our institutions and in our government. But then now they voted for a person who's operating a shadow operation under the shroud of secrecy with unelected billionaires and seeking to slash a lot of things the American public relies on without compliance with the law. I think our litigation has the ability not only to stop that secrecy and to stop these unlawful commissions, but to also help the American people really hold their government accountable and understand the implications.
I'll be right back with more of my conversation with Skye Perryman in a moment. But democracy is on the docket in courtrooms around America, and the best way to stay up to date is to subscribe to Democracy Docket's free daily and weekly newsletters. The link is above and in the show notes below. Okay, so you mentioned, that he signed all these executive orders. A bunch of them are messaging, and some of them are terrible.
Yeah.
What are the things that you mentioned there's been litigation, obviously, over the Doge thing. You mentioned there's been litigation over immigration. I saw a series of lawsuits, I think, filed by states involving birthright citizenship. What are the other sort of, I know there are a lot, but what are the other things that smart people should be paying attention to?
I think people should be paying attention to our civil service. Civil servants, these are career employees who give their life and their careers to serving the American people. There's 2.2 million of them. They don't all work in Washington. The majority of them they all work in states and communities across the country, including in Washington. And in Project 2025, and right on the first day yesterday, you see an effort to dismantle that. These people owe an oath to our Constitution and to the American people. It's actually the jewel of the world. Most countries don't have a civil service that is so just about serving the people. They serve for Republican presidents and Democratic presidents, and Donald Trump doesn't want that. He only wants loyalists in positions of public trust. And so we already saw last night. So I think people that are smart should be paying attention to that. We are looking at it as are others. There are a range of legal problems with what he's already done on the first day. There will be more legal problems with what he will do there.
And this is what people refer to as Schedule F, right?
There's Schedule F, and then there's a lot of other things that they're seeking to do.
Oh.
But yes, when you see reporting about Schedule F, when you see reporting about the civil service, this is this notion that we're going to remove. Some people were already summarily removed from career positions yesterday, and then there were executive orders purporting that the president has some type of authority to do this. I think Congress is going to have Congress has something to say about that. There are actual congressionally enacted protections that have existed for a long time for our civil service, as well as a range of other laws and regulations. So that is something I think people should be laser focused on. And it's unfortunate, and I'm glad we're talking today, because the media was not on it this morning about what he did last night with the civil service. That actually affects people every single day in every community across the country when you're relying on the government, whether it's safety, auto safety, health, medication, food, drugs, mail, roads. I mean, all of it. So that's one area. Immigration's another area. I think you will see, and we've already seen, the attempt to weaponize federal funding.
Right.
This is a part that we sued and won on this. And I think that there's a lot of legal problems with what he's doing in this vein, where he wants to condition funding on sort of ideological alignment. There are a number of practical and legal problems with that. And so you'll see that. And then, you just see also, and I think the performative stuff does matter, because it's part of his strategy to have people say, well, we're just throwing the towel in. We have to retreat. This is so terrible. And, a lot of it is bluster. Some of it's really harmful. And we've got the lawyers to go try to, stop that harm. And we need the American people to have their say. Remember, Trump tried to overturn the ACA in his first weeks in office. He wasn't able to do that because a lot of the things he wants to do are unpopular and harmful. And so it's really kind of that moment.
So let me ask you a question. One of the things that was part of the post-Watergate reforms was preventing presidents from withholding funds that have been appropriated. So in other words, if Congress says, here is $100 million to build a bridge, then the money has to go to build the bridge. The president can't be like, I don't really want to use it to build the bridge. Maybe I won't use it at all. Maybe I'll reprogram it to something else. And I know as part of Project 2025, which you guys, by the way, spearheaded, like everybody should know. The fact that you know about Project 2025 is because of Skye Perryman.
A democracy for it.
Yeah, but is that part of this first round of executive orders, or is that still in front of us that they're going to try to do that?
So they're going to try to do it, and it's blatantly unlawful, and we know it's coming. There are a range of things he's doing in the orders. We have the response center up. People can go see it. Some of these have to be analyzed, where they're trying to do some of these more controversial things. They're trying to kind of hide them in. So I'd have to get back to you exactly, because we're looking at sort of what exactly did this order do versus something they will do down the line. But this is an additional example of just like coming in. It's just like birthright citizenship. I mean, like it's in the Constitution. You don't get to go. I don't care where you are. You don't get to just sit at Capitol One and just say the Constitution doesn't exist. And so I think that that's this impoundment issue for your. I know your listeners are smart and keep up with things. So whether it's federal impoundment of funds or just the conditioning of federal grant making on unconstitutional conditions, sort of ideological alignment, all of that we think we'll see, and there are good legal challenges that can be brought.
Okay, you've mentioned several times, and I wanted to talk about this, your new resource center. This is democracy2025.org. I recommend everybody go visit it. I visited it, candidly, I visited it yesterday to try to make sense of things. I visited it this morning again to try to make sense of things. It is a very good, comprehensive resource for people trying to understand what the hell is going on with these with these executive orders. And, I mentioned Project 2025 because you did something similar with Project 2025 in that you did a very, very deliberate public education campaign. And, I'm like a lawyer. I like to sue. I like to, not like to, I don't like to, I wish I didn't have to, but, I see problems and I bring litigation as a solution. And when you did the Project 2025 thing, I was like, okay, yeah, I hope she's getting ready to sue over Project 2025. But it really, really did elevate people's understanding of the issue so that now when you see the executive orders, people could connect it up. And I'm just curious, obviously you should hope for this new resource center to be as successful as that effort was, because that was like truly unbelievably successful. But talk about how you think about the educational component as it relates to what I think of, which is, all right, show me the court pleadings.
Well, look, I think the educational component is critical because what we did on Project 2025, and you guys helped with this, everybody was doing such a great job, but what we did there was make it toxic. Like it became politically toxic for anyone to associate themselves with this extremism. And what we know about the American people is that they don't actually, all the extreme behavior, whether it's banning abortion, restricting access to reproductive health care, undermining fair wages, all of these issues are horribly unpopular, which is to your, you do the democracy work, right? Which is why actually they have to try to suppress the right to vote, in structural and other ways because they cannot win on these issues. We continue to see that even in this last election. We saw deep red Missouri and, voting for abortion access, even as Donald Trump was the candidate that got the tally of the votes. And so we continue to know that. So for us, the education component is hugely important because it helps people understand what's going on, and it enables one to sort of understand there's not really mandates or political power for a lot of the extreme agenda. Where it's also helpful, I think, for those of us that are litigators is that we can understand when you start saying, like, if they came in and said that if you made this amount of money, all of a sudden you're not eligible for overtime anymore. Because that's, by the way, one of the proposals in Project 2025 would, I think, compromise about 4.3 million people's overtime pay. How would that affect you?
Right.
And all of a sudden you start hearing a lot of things from people, and a lot of our work as lawyers, and I think, Marc, you would say this too, is like about listening, right? We listen to clients and then we are able to take their cases into court. And so for us, it really supports our legal work, but it also supports our broader democracy work, which is like, let's see what it is. So he said he wasn't going to do Project 2025 because that's unpopular. Then he came in and immediately started appointing people, architects of it. You know this story, but like I went into Congress and the Republicans had a hearing and they called 3 witnesses, and unbeknownst to them, every witness was a architect of Project 2025 because you couldn't find anyone that wasn't associated with the document because it's their blueprint. So now we have an administration that is, yet last night, very quickly implementing these unpopular or seeking to implement these unpopular plans. And we think it helps us have a blueprint about where we can go protect people's rights and where we can ensure that people that are harmed by these policies can get the legal help they need, which is what we do in the courtroom. But we hope that it also helps the American people really be clear about what's going on, clear-eyed, and use their voices, demand of their members of Congress, demand of their elected representatives, and demand of their communities that this is not, we want something better. And so we'll see how the Resource Center goes. So far, it's been accessed by a lot of people, and we'll obviously turn it into one of our classic people's guides after we see what some of the trend analysis is over the next few weeks.
And now you are also, in addition to educating the public, in addition to litigating these cases, you're also, working with, as you said at the beginning, a bunch of organizations, some being legal organizations, some being advocacy organizations, some being groups that are simply affected by all of this.
Yes.
I joked at the beginning that, having lots of lawsuits can be a blessing and a curse, and you know how to turn it into a blessing, which is better, makes you a better litigator than I am. But how are you finding that effort? Like, are people shell-shocked? Was there shock and all? Like, are people rallying together? Like, how is that going? I know we're only in the first few days, but how is that effort going?
Well, look, I will say, I think there's a range of responses. I think there are a number of communities that did have some wishful thinking, that thought that somehow this was going to be something we could ease into. That didn't happen. I woke up this morning and I was like, oh, it is Tuesday. It's
Mhm.
not, it feels
It
like
is.
it's like
It is.
Friday.
Yeah.
It's Tuesday. And so, I think that I think people are quickly waking up to that. And I do think that there's been a bit of that. But with other groups that we're working with, this is, the groups we're working with at the state level. I mean, if you live in Arkansas, and Sarah Huckabee Sanders, but we represent librarian who literally the day we won the court judgment, the library was vandalized. Because of this extremism that's taking place and these national groups that are seeking to play local roles, trying to wield an anti-democratic agenda. And so I think for some of the communities that we work with the most, this has been an existential time. It continues to be one, and they're geared up and ready to go. And so we were really pleased on the Doge lawsuit. I mean, it's not every day you see the veterans, the Federation of Teachers, the American Public Health Association, right, who has a bit to say about the way that the government needs to function for people to keep us safe, and like auto safety and other kinds of experts, good government groups, all coming together on these things. So that's the kind of thing that we're going to seek to do. But I do think that if you thought that this was a thing we could ease ourselves into, I think yesterday dispelled that. But hopefully for the Trump administration, they got a message that the lawsuits are coming, and were there right on the steps as they were leaving the inauguration.
Yeah. So one of the questions I always get from people is, you know, they don't know what to do. They are reading all of this stuff. They are concerned. They are terrified by it, and they're not sure anyone's fighting. Well, I'm here to tell you, everyone, Skye Perryman's fighting. Democracy Forward's fighting. Like, you think I'm a fighter? There's a reason why I was involved in setting up Democracy Forward to begin with, and why Skye Perryman leads it. She is an absolute pit bull for democracy, and fearless and tough and everything that all of you say you want. But even with that, Skye, people are worried. And so, like, what do you tell them? What do you tell? Because you can't tell the librarian in Arkansas that everything's going to be okay.
Right.
Like, it may not, like, like in the end it was, or hopefully
Yeah,
it is, but
it will be.
like
I mean,
you can't, in the work you've done around reproductive health, you can't tell the women who you talk to that it's going to all be just fine. Dobbs sucks. It's still there. Like, what do you tell people?
well, one is that, the only way to get out of this is to go through it. So first of all, if you think you're going to shortcut what has been a multi-decade backlash against a vision of democracy, and we were reflecting on Martin Luther King Day, there has always been an organized, aggressive, and yes, violent movement in this country to keep this country's promise from the American people, to reserve it only for a few, to reserve it only for certain people that believe a certain way or look a certain way or are a certain gender. There's always been that movement. And the way this country has gotten through it is not through a shortcut. It's through hard work and grit and everyday people doing what they can in their communities. I woke up this morning to a text from a mom in Texas who is going to her school board meeting over something, right? It's getting through it. I think you need to get through it with some good lawyers, and that's what we're trying to do. But there's no shortcutting this. And so what I tell people is that the only way out of it is through it. And we can get through it together through putting up our best fight. And I, encourage people to have some lawyers involved in that fight, because we know that Donald Trump and others do respond actually to legal pressure and do respond at times to public pressure. But this is it. And if you say this to me, you've said it to me when I left my corporate job to come as a line litigator to Democracy Forward that didn't have a website, and we didn't have a democracy docket that was there to elevate us. And you said it to me again when I came back, and we talk about it a lot. But like, I want to be able to tell my kids, my son and my godkids, that this is what we did. Cecile Richards passed away yesterday, and what an advocate. And of course, very fittingly, her family came out and said that this is what she wanted to leave people with, is that when there was so much at stake, what did you do? We want to say we did everything we could. And so that's what I say to people. And I'm having a bunch of calls today with people that are scared, and they're going to need to go to court in order to protect their rights. And they're scared about going to court. We had to put our name. I mean, Elon Musk started tweeting about our lawsuit right before I got on this with you. We had to put our names, and our clients had to put their names on individual papers that are being filed in public against this. You do this every day. But we can do it together and with courage. And the point of it is to say we did everything we could.
Well, you're definitely going to be able to say that in this great time of crisis, when the issue, look, none of us wanted the threat of authoritarianism to be the cause of our generation. None of us aspired, you know what, when I grow up, I hope that I can be involved in an existential fight to prevent the end of American democracy. None of us wanted this fight, but this is the fight that has come to our generation. And as you say, people have a choice. They can either back away from it, or they can engage it. They can do the really cowardice thing that we're seeing so many people do, and they're actually collaborating with it. But you have chosen to engage it, and you've, as you say, you put your name and you put your name on the line every day. And for that, I honor and celebrate you, and I know everybody who listened to this does as well. How can people support your work at Democracy Forward?
Well, go to democracyforward.org. If you can spare some money, donate to us, because we have a lot of lawyers that we've got to make sure we represent all of our clients for free. So donating is great, but more importantly, sign up for our newsletter. Follow our social media channels. And the other thing is reach out to us. If something is happening in your community and you're hearing it's because, I mean, this is how we got some of the cases before it came to us, because people in communities started waking up and all of a sudden their funding for this grant was gone, right? Reach out. We have people, everything's, we don't have any AI at Democracy Forward. We're like reading the email, people,
real people.
A human will respond to you, and reach out and let us know what's going on. And I'll tell you, Mark, this morning I came into a note from a service worker in our building who donated $25 and wrote just the kindest note and said, all I could think to do yesterday was to support your organization. I see what you guys are doing every day. All of it is on the line for people in his profession, for people in his community. We get notes like that all the time. And so just sign up, get engaged. Let's be part of a community. And we're going to, the only way we get out of it is through it. And so let's get through it together.
Look, everyone, I am telling you, there is no organization more deserving of your support, whether it's money, your time, your attention, than Democracy Forward. There is a reason why I'm having Skye on right after Donald Trump became the president again. There's a reason why I remain on its board as its chair on an uncompensated basis. By the way, as Skye said, all of the work that is done for these plaintiffs is done for free. So please support Skye's work, support the work of Democracy Forward. And Skye Perryman, a true pleasure and a hero.
Thank you. Always good to see you. Let's come back and talk about some more lawsuits when we file.
And we're going to have you on. I wish it weren't the case, but I think we're going to have you on regularly here.
We're going to have a lot to talk about, and then wait till the state legislative sessions. I mean, they're going to start up. So yeah.
Thank you, Skye Perryman.
Right. Thanks.
Thanks for watching this episode of Defending Democracy. Please make sure you're subscribed to our free daily and weekly newsletters. We'll see you next time.